Okay, I thought this could be an interesting idea for a video. To be honest, I've been seeing these kind of things pop up a lot recently. Who's better, this quarterback or that quarterback? And I think I often roll my eyes when I see something like that. Not because it's not a conversation worth having. I just feel like people that have the conversation tend to be very simplistic. It's either, well, this guy has better numbers, so it's this guy, or, well, this guy has better postseason success, so it's that guy. And I figured, let's have one of these conversations, but try to be a little bit more nuanced in the discussion. So that's what I'm going to be doing today with the Justin Herbert versus Jalen Hurts discussion. So why am I comparing these two players? Well, I think there's a decent amount that they have in common, actually. They were both drafted the same year. They both had very different success levels in the NFL in terms of team success. But ultimately, I just feel like I see a lot of people comparing these two players. They're kind of two guys that don't really get talked about in the top four category of the Burrow, Lamar, Allen, and Mahomes top four. But I think that these are kind of two guys that people will put in the fifth spot. Some people will put in the fifth spot. So that's kind of why I thought it's fair to compare these two. So what do I want to do? Well, first I want to look at some numbers. And if you know me, I don't just look at box score stats. We'll throw those on the screen, but I like some other stats as well. So below me are a list of several numbers. I'm going to explain what some of these are as we go, because I'm assuming these are some numbers people aren't fully aware of. But first we have PFF grade. That's kind of the one that I think we know. And also I should mention, these are just last year's stats for these guys. Most of these do include playoffs with the exception of passer rating. PFF always includes playoffs, and EPA always includes playoffs, but the other stuff doesn't. But yeah, you see Herbert, significantly higher PFF grade, 10 points higher. That's a pretty big jump. Turnover-worthy play percentage, also sizable jump there, 0.8 points. That's definitely not nothing right there. Where Hurts has the edge, the ones in bold are who is in the lead, is EPA and passer rating. Where EPA per play, you see Hurts has a very minuscule edge. He does have the edge, though. Let's give him credit. Also, passer rating, a very small edge of 2 points. So essentially, if you don't know what these are, passer rating, I'm assuming you know that. EPA is essentially estimated points added on plays where you take the ball. If you throw one pass and that play would have given you an estimate of 1 point gained by how the play went, then your EPA for that play would be 1, right? This is an average. Both guys are good in that category, but both are about the same. You also see for a couple other stats, ADOT, also known as average depth of target. Herbert throws on average a yard further down the field than Hurts does, which is always interesting to look at. Big time throw percentage. Again, Herbert has a full point percentage higher than Hurts. So on average, every 100 throws, Herbert makes one big time throw more than Hurts does, which is, again, not nothing, but that's not a huge jump right there. So, okay, what do we do with those numbers? Well, if we are going to take them at face value, just look at the numbers, which I don't. I watched the film too. But the numbers would indicate Herbert is usually better, but the offensive output when they each take a snap is around the same. So why is that the case? Well, I mean, again, it could be several things. It could just be good old-fashioned luck, but I think there's a more kind of obvious reason. You see this next to me. This is where their team ranks on two specific categories. I just decided to go with pass blocking and receiving. Obviously, we know that Hurts also has a great defense and a great running game, but great run blocking. But we're simply just talking about when they have the ball. You see that Hurts pass blocking is 6th best. Herbert's not bad at 12th best. And then the receiving, again, Herbert maybe not as bad as people make it out to be, 19th best, but still not quite as good as 8th best. So Hurts does have the edge in both of those two categories. To me, this all matches what I've seen on film. I feel like the overall offensive output tends to be the same, but when I watch film, it feels like Hurts is a part of the offense and certainly doing things that make the offense go, right? The downfield passing to A.J. Brown, the first thing I think about. But other things, his rushing ability, he does throw well over the middle. Like, there's a lot he does well. I think Herbert tends to be a bit bigger part of his offense that also had a very similar output in the regular season. Herbert also does a better job at protecting the football, which factors into all of this. So from that logic alone, you could pretty conceivably say, okay, well, Herbert was better last year. Again, last year is not every year, but last year you could say, hey, yeah, Herbert had slightly better numbers. The offensive output was mostly the same, and Herbert was, dealing with less. So they did the same. Herbert did it with less. Herbert's better. But of course, the one thing that has to be mentioned is the whole postseason stuff, which is in these numbers, with exception to passer rating, as I said, the postseason stuff was just 1 out of, I believe Herbert played every game, so 1 out of 18 games for Herbert, and then for Hurts it's more, but it's still he missed a few games, but it's 4 out of the 20, 19, however many games it was that he played. It's still only a small chunk of those games, but for Herbert, the reason why he only played 1 game is because he played very bad in that 1 game. Hurts, I'm not going to say lit the world on fire in the postseason, but did play very well in the conference championship and won Super Bowl MVP. So he certainly did do well in those 2 weeks. Didn't play great the first 2 postseason weeks, but he more than made up for it when he needed to. And the question is just, how much weight do you put on something like that, right? If you buy into what I have said, that in a usual average regular season game, Herbert gives you a little bit more than Hurts, can give you the same offensive output with less talent, then usually you would just say that Herbert is better. But again, if you accept that, and you also accept that Hurts has played better in the playoffs, well, now what do you do? Because the question isn't who has done better up until this point. The question is, who would you rather have in the 2025 season? It's just how much weight do you put on it? Did Herbert have a bad game because, hey, sometimes you flip a coin 18 times and it lands on heads 17 and then tails 1 time, and 1 time in the playoffs? Or is there actually something there with him that causes him to play bad in that playoff game? The one thing I will push back on is he was fine in the Jaguars game a few years back. People have kind of revisionist history tried to make that seem like he also struggled in that, but that's not true. I went back and watched the game. He was fine, made some mistakes early on, but also made some really good plays, got them up big, and then late in the game, it wasn't his fault that the defense literally couldn't get a stop, and even he played well offensively. They weren't able to get points on the board. And I would also say, Hurts hasn't always been awesome in the playoffs, right? He's had his bad playoff games as well. He's played poorly a couple times in Tampa Bay. The first playoff run, he mostly, his job was to not screw it up until they got to the Super Bowl, given playing the Giants and the Brock Purdy-less 49ers. Was very much just do your job, which he did. Got to give him credit. And then he played great both times in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. But is he great in the Super Bowl, or is he great against the Chiefs, right? That's a fair thing you can discuss as well. I don't know the answer to that. But I think that's kind of what makes this conversation ultimately fun, is because I do think Herbert, the eye test, watching him on film, and also just the numbers do back up, he tends to be a little bit better of a player. But also you have the hardware with Hurts that you just don't have. So how much do you want to put on that is totally subjective. You can ask 100 different people and they can give you 100 different answers, and nobody is wrong in that situation. If there's 100 different answers, someone will be wrong. But usually, you can ask 2 different people, they can give you different answers, and I think nobody can, they can both be correct. I personally tend to buy into more of the philosophy that I think the average fan overrates championships for a quarterback, although I do think that it's fair to say that they matter. Ultimately, if you want to say, hey, Hurts has done the thing, he did what you're supposed to do, let's give him extra credit, I think that's fair. I think we should give him extra credit, actually, for that. I think I'm still going to pick the guy who's just consistently usually better in a given game, which is Herbert. That's just how I would view it. I know people are just going to view that differently, and I think that's totally cool. But ultimately, when it comes down to Herbert versus Hurts, I don't think there is a wrong answer. I think you can honestly argue either one if you want, and I think depending on your reasoning, I might think it's a bad answer, but the answer itself, I think, is fine. I think it just comes down to the reasoning. So, yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know. Who do you think is better? Who would you rather have on your team starting next season? Really think. Who would you be more excited about if your team traded for that player? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And, of course, as always, thanks for watching.